All right, still looking at the Central Bank of Nigeria's RT200 initiative. We're looking at the workability of this initiative, raising about $200 billion in foreign exchange repatriation. CBN said that it includes a set of policies for non-oil export promotion. All right, now we'll be drilling down on this and other matters in the Agric industry. Joining us is the president, Mr. Chukwuwachukwu, President Agric Industrial Entrepreneurs, to tell us more on how the agric sector can, benefit from this lofty initiative. Great to have you, sir. Good morning.
Thank you.
So, looking at this, initiative now, do you think the agric and industrial entrepreneurs, fit into this plan?
Absolutely. It's the only way to go, actually. I mean, everybody in the world knows that agricultural sector creates the most jobs anywhere in the world, and Nigeria is not an exception. The problem has always been not giving impetus to drive the system. There have been so many initiatives by the government, so many programs and projects. I would immediately say it isn't the absence of policy initiatives, the absence of correct policy implementation. There have been so many interventions in this country, so much money has gone into it, that nobody has actually implemented the policy initiatives of the federal government. So you can have policy initiatives.
But looking at this one now, what do you think can actually make this work?
Well, at the Agricultural and Industrial Entrepreneurs of Nigeria, AIEN, we've come up with a situation or a program that, creates agricultural industrial clusters in every local government of Nigeria. We're discussing with development finance institutions at this point. We're talking to deposit money banks, and we're trying to actually partner with some government agencies. I was the Director General of the National Directorate for Employment, and we came up with the famous 4 core programs: skills acquisition, programs in agriculture, small-scale enterprises, which is the bedrock of SME development in this country, and special public works. And every other program that has come up is still revolving around that. But see, the problem in our area is that the federal government is the father of all these agencies. Nobody's monitoring the input-output scenario of what they're doing. And they're competing amongst each other, wasting resources and not achieving much. I applaud the special public program, works program of the president, 774, 1,000 special public works engagement of personnel. But is there production there? There's no production. You're taking funds that should be targeted at production, and you're paying people for doing nothing. They're not producing. Now, we on the other hand, advocating, and we'll be meeting with the presidency on this issue. If you put that kind of money into agriculture, into a recyclable funding system where the money can be actually revolved and recovered, we're going to target production and productivity. Let us say we have a cluster and an advantage, local government's advantage is cassava. Okay, we're targeting about 500 entrepreneurs. We call them agripreneurs, because the bedrock of any development, and to a large extent developed economy, must necessarily rest on small and medium enterprises and the informal sector. So let's define that.
Because I've seen issues where, the central bank has found it hard to, get some of these farmers to pay back.
Well, central bank is it's wise in their decisions, but I'm not sure they've taken time to re-examine the programs they're putting out there, and I'm not even sure the money is being targeted. It's being actually assessed. So we should be asking ourselves the truth: is the money assessed? We sat down in my organization, we analyzed the programs, the Anchor Borrowers program, What is the workability of it? How much have you recovered? The SMICE program, Small and Medium Enterprise Development, Investment Fund, how much have you put that? How much have you recovered? I'm not criticizing them. Those are laudable initiatives, but it puts stumbling blocks. And everything revolves around collateralization of the loans. But we have come up with a system that can actually guarantee, through the collateral system, guarantee recovery and production and productivity. Insecurity directly linked to production and productivity. Okay? So unless we come back to actually create workable programs, not phantom programs, this all sounds so great. It's all development finance initiative. So if we take, for instance, a cluster in a particular local government whose advantageous product is cassava. There's a dearth of cassava. There's a demand, high demand for cassava. I've discussed with Flour Mills Association, the former MD, vice chairman, told me that they require over 5 million tons of cassava. Now, if you plant around there, you're producing raw materials for cassava users for further processing. A cassava cluster will give rise to secondary processing using the raw materials of that produce starch, gari, ethanol, cassava chips, and stuff like that. And so
all adding to the
agricultural value chain. So we know what to do. We're not doing it. We're not letting the right people do it. And by the way, as Director General of ND, yes, I did create so many jobs, but I can make a bold statement right here. Government cannot create jobs.
Yeah,
jobs must be a private sector driven affair. It cannot create jobs. So all this thing, injecting money into government to create, it's just going to be money for the boys.
Okay, well, the central bank, announced that raw produce exporters will no longer be eligible for foreign exchange. At this point, instead they're offering rebates to portfolio investors, and they also announced that they'll rather give farmers loans to expand their plantations instead. How do you see that?
Well, I've told you, it isn't the absence of policy initiatives. It's the absence of policy implementation. When you make this great sounding pronouncement, how do you see to it? We'll have a bunch of guys. I've been an operator in the government system. I'm also now in the private sector, and I do know that those things don't work unless you target them. Now, we've given some development finance institutions. We're talking with Bank of Industry. They seem to be buying into the idea. We're talking with some other deposit money banks. They're buying into the idea. We're talking to the presidency. And by the way, a visionary leader like the Director General of Raw Materials Research and Development Council has seen the need to partner with the private sector. So we have an MOU with the raw materials. So we developed, a program called RMBCI, Raw Materials Based Clusters Initiative, because the absence of raw materials has stymied the effect of industrialization in this country. Most of our industries are comatose because they don't have raw materials. Now, imagine a situation where, the industries that are lying comatose because they don't have access to their usual pension to import. Now, basically, you have raw materials. You have tomato cluster that can produce tomatoes. So you have tomato industry, tomato paste industry gaining there. You have flour mills, and we have targeted people from the Northeast who can produce, wheat. All of a sudden, you have less dependency on import and less pressure on the naira. Are we thinking about this thing? We talk about import, student. You just can't come out and say, we're canceling, we're banning foreign exchange. This is and so. What is the exchange? What are you giving in return? What targeting are you making to substitute that? So that's what I'm asking them to do that. Don't just go, I'm an economist. But when you come out from economics class, how do you culturalize it? How do you look at it? How do you make it work in the system? Just don't go and give me a textbook definition of economics.
Right. All right, talking about, adding value now, looking at, some of our raw materials and, our farmers, take for instance, there is value added, and what about do we have a ready market?
Of course you do have
out there?
it.
And, most of these countries are already producing and adding value. What about competition?
Well, competition, that have been an issue, leads to increased, improved quality. Now, if you check the metrics in this country, the demand-supply gap is huge. There's excess demand over supply. Well, that is what causes inflation. Whenever you have the excess demand over supply, you have inflation. Now, the point of equilibrium is when demand meets supply. That P1, that's established the P1 price. Anything above that becomes profit. So we're looking at entrepreneurs, the agripreneurs, whose motive is profit. So you give a man, give Laddie, I want to take you out of Channels TV. I want to put Laddie as an entrepreneur. So instead of filling one job in Channels TV, which I agree, John Mama is a great guy, but I like to turn Laddie away from becoming an employee to becoming an employer of labor. That is how you create employment. There's no magic to it. That's what I did. So if I arm you with a capital, your problem at this point will be the banks will ask you to go and get your grandmother's clothes to collateralize. If you bring the clothes, the bank said, oh no, she was buried in the wrong clothes. I said, but you told me to bring this. So they're not helping matters. So together, we've got to work out a system where a collateral is adequate, the acceptable collateral. So at AIEN, we'll come up with cross-collateralization so that you guarantee each other, but we also have a system where, in an ecosystem that can revolve around there, collateral is there, recovery is there, targeted tracking you have to track the capital injected in the economy. Because if you don't track it, that's diversion. Now, a lot of these financial institutions lose money because they're not tracking, and they don't have the capacity to track the funds. If you don't track the funds, you lose quality. And when you track it, at least you're targeting towards what you want to produce as production and productivity.
All right, and we do have the issue of global inflation,
Yes.
right now, and most of the regulators are looking at hiking rates.
Yes.
This will definitely impact, this sector.
Yeah. So if you hike rates, what causes inflation? Is it not excess demand over supply?
The cost of borrowing goes up.
Is not excess demand over supply? Okay, so competition, and the government is not, that's what central banks should be looking at. We're looking at the monetary system, monetary value. What is capital in circulation? Is it producing? You don't just go and arbitrarily set up an interest rate. It must be a function of the microeconomics in the system. All right? So when you look at inflation, sometimes actually, now you take the 774,000 jobs, 1,000 naira per candidate, per local government. That's 774,000. The effect of that, when you look at what they pay them, 22,000 naira per month, that's about 15 billion naira injected into the capital. And that's a lot of money. That's creating a lot of demand, chasing very limited supply. So inflation will be a consequence of that. But if you target production at the point, inflation can come up a little bit, but when production increases, that means the supply is coming over that demand.
Right.
You get to that point of equilibrium, then the rest is that's how you control inflation. There's no magic to it.
Okay, but what kind of conversations are you having with the presidency and the CBN regarding boosting this industry?
Well, you talk to people who are willing. We're making moves right now. I met with the Minister of Science and Technology because that's his domain. Our Raw Materials Research and Development Council is parastatal under them. And so we are, together with the Director General and the Ministry, now looking at the system where we target raw materials. Okay, raw material leads to production. And so we're hoping, the minister was very receptive. I am here in Lagos. We're supposed to be meeting with some deposit money banks and to see how we had, when I was national president of NASI, we had a great MD who was MD of First Bank. He bought into the vision. Unfortunately, something went wrong around the collateral system that was supposed to be provided by the state government didn't come. But we have a system. We're supposed to be meeting with them this week, and I think the first bank, well, I don't want to promote any bank. We're going to be meeting with the group MDs who have vision. Because when you even have these entrepreneurs, okay, working within our established ecosystem, it deepens penetration of banking to the rural areas. It increases agency banking. It advances credit to where it's supposed to go. Now, when you have 500 people in a cluster that we're proposing, earning wages because they cannot earn salary. Salary is a function of the earning scale. So the kind of money, it triggers demand. Because now you have people in the rural areas who are working and earning wages. The effect of earning wages is it triggers demand because then they're going to be, if somebody be eating gari, he wants to eat rice.
Right.
Okay.
More of a domino effect.
Indeed.
There. Okay, well, you know, it's 2022, you know, we're in a pre-election year. You know, how do you see this industry faring? And what kind of policy would you like to see briefly?
A policy is very simple. A target at human beings, production and productivity. Okay. And a hungry man is an angry man. If you're not earning wages,
right,
and you see people, you call them, you know, insurgents, you call them security risks, because they have nothing to do. So we must target full employment. And full employment is created when you have productivity. So that's what I think we should be doing. We should be creating agripreneurs. We should be creating people. Now, secondary process of the primary production is industrialization. We now have somebody who's looking at the value chain, you know, now he has raw materials in the value chain to become employer of labor himself. And by the way, we've talked to out buyers and off buyers, so they're ready. Now, within this system, if our brothers, if our people in CBN will understand it, you now see that we're producing for domestic consumption, we're producing for raw materials, production for further processing. We're also producing for export. China, United States, they're all eager to buy as much soybean as you want. We'll talk to people, they're asking for us for some peanuts from the northern part of the northwestern part of Nigeria.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're ready to add value.
They add value.
All of this.
So you can earn foreign exchange. Why are we so dependent on oil? When you have more people earning foreign exchange, it will reduce the pressure on the naira, and the exchange rate mechanism will fall by itself.
Right. It all, you know, the plans look quite simple, but it all boils down to
There's no magic to it.
But it can be done. All right, Mr. Chukwuwachukwu, thank you so much, President Agric and Industrial Entrepreneurs of Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming on the program today.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right, so after the break, commodities market update is next. Do stay with us. This is Business Morning.